Hey guys, welcome back to another Clash Royale video, and today I want to talk to you guys about the next round of balance changes in Clash Royale. I found some official news regarding balance changes over on Reddit that I really wanted to share with you. It's just a small amount of news, but it's pretty important, which is why I wanted to share it with you. And then obviously afterwards, I will do as I do at the end of every month and share with you my personal balance change wish list. So let's go over here to the Clash Royale Reddit, where I have the post by Drew, a member of the Clash Royale community team. And here's what he had to say. He says, I wanted to let you know that in the next update, we'll be including a whole bunch of balance changes, including a complete melee range balancing that affects a lot of cards with melee attacks. So this sounds pretty huge, because if you remember back in June, for the June balances, they came out and said that they would be ramping down the balance changes and having smaller balance changes going forward. But it says right here, in the next update, we'll be including a whole bunch of balance changes. Now, I have no idea if that is like a bunch of separate changes, like, you know, if they're changing like 10 or 15 or 20 cards, no idea, or if it's more of a mechanic change that affects a wide variety of cards. Remember when they did the whole swarm unit stagger deploy timer, and it affected like barbarians, goblin gang, bats, rascals, etc. That was kind of like one mechanic change that affected like 5 or 6 cards in total. So I have no idea if that's a similar situation here, but it does say including a complete melee range balancing that affects a lot of cards with melee attacks. Now, I have no idea what that means. Feel free to leave a guess down below what you think it means. Hopefully they mean they're fixing the bug of the ranged mini P.E.K.K.A, the ranged P.E.K.K.A that I've mentioned before. You know, for example, like if you tornado spell a P.E.K.K.A away from your Hog Rider, I've had scenarios where it still attacks from like 6 tiles away if you NATO it. So I have no idea if that's related at all to this, but it does sound pretty huge, right? It should be a pretty impactful change if a lot of cards with melee attacks are being affected, and if there is a whole bunch of balance changes. So let me know, guys, down below, are you excited for a big bunch of balance changes, or are you enjoying the meta right now? Personally, I kind of look forward to a bit of a shakeup. The meta is really balanced right now in terms of, you know, there's a ton of win conditions that are viable, but I would prefer, you know, just having some like different kind of cards into the meta right now. So that sounds pretty huge. Now we also, in terms of, you know, balance changes, we also of course know that they have confirmed that the snowball will be nerfed in the next client update. So that's also kind of like confirmed for the next client update. But that is the news that I want to share with you guys, because it sounds pretty important. Next update will include a whole bunch of balance changes and a complete melee range balancing that affects a lot of cards with melee attacks. Like I said, guys, feel free to leave a guess down below what you think that means. So with that being said, I wanted to finish the video off right here with my personal balance change wish list, as I do at the end of every month. So I have this website right here pulled up, guys, royaleapi.com. It is a fantastic website to find the use rates, the win rates of cards in Clash Royale. Obviously, it's not 100% accurate, so do take it with a grain of salt, but I will leave a link down below to the website if you are interested in checking it out. Now, I have these stats for grand challenges pulled up right here. I often get asked, you know, why do I use these stats for grand challenges? Why don't I use stats for ladder? And the simple answer is grand challenges have tournament standard, ladder has unequal levels, and it makes your stats a bit more unreliable, because on ladder a card might be over leveled and it might appear stronger than it actually is, but it's just simply because of it being over leveled. So anyways, I have a couple of cards now on my nerf list that I previously did not have. Number 1, number 2, Barbarian Barrel and Snowball definitely need nerfs. Now, obviously, Snowball nerf has already been confirmed, so I won't spend too much time talking about that one. But the Barbarian Barrel, despite like I don't know, like 5 or so like small nerfs over the past like 5 or so months, it's still the #1 most popular card in Clash Royale. Now, I don't know how they would nerf it. I've seen some people suggest, you know, putting it back to 3 elixir. Personally, I think that would kill a card. So I would prefer they keep it at 2. Honestly, guys, personally, I don't really even mind having the Bar Barrel or the Snowball in the meta. They're kind of cool cards in my opinion. But I know the vast majority do want to see them nerfed. If I were to nerf the Barbarian Barrel, I would do it in one of 2 ways. Idea 1 is to make it have a more narrow attack. Right now, it has the same, I think, width of the log, even though visually it looks smaller. And I've had many scenarios where you have like a princess, for example, that appears to be out of range of the Barbarian Barrel. Like she's not even touching it, but she'll still die because the range is actually a bit longer than the width rather, sorry, is a bit longer than the Barbarian Barrel actually is. So I think it'd be okay to nerf the width, make it a bit more narrow. The other way I would nerf it is to nerf the actual range of how far it travels, because a Barbarian Barrel by itself at the bridge gets 2 Barbarian shots in a tower, which makes it a very useful spell in a lot of different situations. For example, like you could use the Barbarian Barrel by itself to force pressure on a tower and force out a response, often at a negative elixir exchange for your opponent. So maybe if they nerf the range a bit so it only gets 1 Barbarian shot by itself at the bridge, that would be a decent nerf as well. So that's 2 ideas for nerfing the Barbarian Barrel. Obviously, Snowball has been confirmed to be nerfed as well. 2 cards that I want to mention here are the Mega Minion and the Baby Dragon. Often people say nerf those cards. The Mega Minion, it's strong, obviously, but I don't really want to see it nerfed just because it's one of the only kind of like really solid air defense cards. And if it is nerfed, I feel like Lava Loon and Balloon decks overall will be really, really strong. But the Baby Dragon is another card that is a pretty popular card that people want to see nerfed. And I'll kind of talk about that more in a minute here, as I mentioned one more card that I think is pretty important to mention. 2 more cards here on my nerf list. Number 1 is the Dark Prince. I know, it's just kind of barely entered into the meta, so it's nothing too crazy right now. But it does have a 56% win rate according to Royale API. So I wouldn't be surprised if it was nerfed very slightly, like maybe like a 1% or 2% damage nerf would be all it needs. Because obviously, you know, it's good having that card into the meta to keep the Swarm and bait decks kind of like in check. But it might just be a bit too strong right now. So Dark Prince is on my nerf list. And the last card on my nerf list is going to be right here, the Royal Giant. The Royal Giant has been top tier win condition for many months in a row now. Royal Giant Furnace Control, I think, is one of the most consistent decks right now in Clash Royale in terms of having not too many bad matchups. And I think it's one of the best win conditions in the entire game, second to the Miner. I think Miner is the best win condition in Clash Royale because it fits in basically any deck can use Miner. So Miner, in my opinion, is number 1 best win condition in Clash Royale, but I would have to say Royal Giant is probably number 2. So I could see a slight nerf to the Royal Giant in the future. But that is the end of my nerf list. Nerf Barbarian Barrel, nerf Snowball, nerf Dark Prince, and nerf the Royal Giant. Those are my 4 cards. Now, I really want to see a lot more buffs going forward in Clash Royale. There is a ton of cards down here near the bottom of the list that have been there for a while that I feel like could use some love. The most important ones that I want to mention today are going to be the Wall Breakers, the Goblin Cage, the Royal Recruits, and the Cannon card. Those 4 cards. And that would we have 8 cards in total in my balanced wish list. Wall Breakers, guys. So they obviously buffed the Wall Breakers in, I think it was June. They buffed it, right? In June? I can't remember. Maybe it was the month before that. But anyways, the Wall Breakers, just like, they really could use some love. Even with all the buffs they've been doing for the Wall Breakers, they they get countered so easily. So it's really hard to put the wall breakers into your deck, because as a, you know, win condition, as a backup win condition, they're so easy to counter that they're so unreliable. Like, you can't really rely on them for damage because they die to everything, right? The only time they ever really do work is if your opponent is kind of caught off guard, which might work once, but, you know, after that, you know, if your opponent is decent, they won't fall for it again. So I really feel like the wall breakers, they either need, you know, a really solid buff on offense, you know, make them 2 elixir, I don't know, go crazy with it, I don't care, or give them defensive value. Give them that death bomb, make them explode even when they die, you know? It doesn't make sense that they can be running with a explosive bomb that has the fuse lit, and when they die, the bomb does not explode. So I would, you know, it'd be cool if they dropped a bomb when they died. And that way, you could throw them into your deck, not only as a win condition, but also as a, you know, kind of like emergency defensive card, right? One of the reasons why the Battle Ram is so strong as a win condition and often outperforms, I don't know, Hog Rider, for example, in Bridge Spam decks. Same thing with the Ram Rider. The reason why the Ram Rider, you know, outperforms Hog Rider in many scenarios is because it offers defensive value as well as being a win condition. You can use the Ram Rider, obviously, to get damage done to a tower, but you could also use it in emergencies to distract a card and slow it down on defense. Same thing with Battle Ram. If you need to, you can use it to pull things to the opposite lane. You could use it emergency on defense to distract something, and then the barbarians spawn out and defend. The wall breakers lack that defensive value to be a reliable kind of card into your deck. So I really feel like having that death bomb would be pretty good value for the wall breakers. Obviously, it might need a bit of tuning of other stats to compensate, but I definitely kind of just want to see that with that card, just to kind of overall make it more of an interesting card altogether. Because as it is right now, I honestly think they should be common card, because they don't feel epic. They're basically fire spirits that only target buildings. So I don't know how that makes them epic. Like, how is fire spirits common and wall breakers epic when they do the same thing? They just target buildings. So adding the death bomb to the wall breakers, I think would be a pretty good idea. The other card here, guys, is the Goblin Cage. It really needs a buff. You know, 2 of the 3 newest cards in Clash Royale are at the bottom, which I think is a pretty bad sign. Goblin Cage really needs a buff. Like, it's pretty bad. It's almost I would say just worse than wall breakers. Couple ideas for the Goblin Cage here. Number 1 idea is to make the Goblin attack while in the cage. It's kind of doesn't make sense to me how the Goblin could be inside that cage. And for example, you could have a giant like right next to it attacking the Goblin Cage, and the Goblin is just sitting in there doing nothing. It would make more sense if the Goblin could attack through the bars of the cage and defend itself while it's inside that Goblin Cage. That's idea number 1 for the Goblin Cage, is to make it actually defend while in cage. Idea 2 is to simply make it 3 elixir cost. Because 4 elixir, you could basically get a furnace, which is way more value. Make it 3 elixir, and that way it competes with the tombstone. So those are the 2 ideas that I have for the Goblin Cage. Overall, kind of just on the whole topic of new cards in general, I really wish they were faster to buff new cards that are weak. Because, you know, if they come out with a new card that is too strong, they almost always nerf it immediately the next month. It's like, hey, new card, it's a bit too strong, it's only been out for like 2 weeks, boom, nerf it, right? But when they have a new card that's weak, it's like, hey, new card, it's too weak, let's wait a whole year to buff it, right? You know, I would prefer they gave the same love to weak cards as they did to strong cards. You know, card comes out strong, they nerf it immediately. Card comes out weak, takes a half a year to buff it. So personally, I would love to see some just good, strong buffs to both the Goblin Cage and the Wall Breakers. Moving on, guys, we have the Royal Recruits. Is another kind of like, I guess, newer card, came out in July of last year, I believe. And it just, you know, it came out too strong. It was nerfed and then it was buffed, but it was never really the same. So I just feel like a small, like 2% damage buff to the Royal Recruit is all it needs. Just a very slight nudge, a very slight buff is all I would want for the Royal Recruits. And then finally we have the Cannon card. I'm not too sure how to buff this card because like it's been through some stuff. It was really strong at one point, and then it was really weak, and then it kind of just stayed weak, right? So it's kind of been through a roller coaster in terms of strength, but I definitely feel like a small buff for the Cannon card could do some work. Maybe buff the Cannon card health, but nerf the health of the building cannon. I don't know, but overall, a buff for the Cannon card would be on my list. So that's the 4 cards on my buff list: Wall Breakers, Goblin Cage, Royal Recruits, and the Cannon card. Sorry. One card in particular that I do want to mention right here is the Wizard. This is one that I want to kind of dedicate a whole section to talking about. The Wizard. The Wizard right now, I would say, is probably the #1 most controversial card in Clash Royale. It absolutely destroys on mid-ladder when it's over leveled, you know, max level 13 Wizard, you know, 4,000 trophies. It's an absolute beast. It destroys everything. It has so much damage. Very strong card at mid-ladder. But at max ladder and at tourney standard, it's very weak. Like in grand challenges right now, it only has a 19% win rate. That's very low. It has a lower win rate right now than the Witch, than the Wall Breakers, than the Heal Spell, than the Recruits, and the Goblin Cage. So basically, like, almost every card in the game has a higher win percentage than the Wizard. E-Barbs are the only card that I can see right now that are lower than the Wizard. Like, in fact, going by win rate right here, guys. Let's change it to win rate right here. Win percentage. Wizard right now is the 2nd lowest card in the entire game in terms of win percentage. So it's obviously like fairly weak at tourney standard. But like I said, guys, the issue is it's too strong on ladder. So I'm not suggesting buffing the Wizard at all, but I am suggesting redesigning it, reworking it all together. My idea here is to make the Wizard cost 4 elixir and change all of the stats accordingly. Give it lower health, give it lower damage. Basically make the Wizard compete with the Baby Dragon. Everyone kind of complains that the Baby Dragon is too popular. Every deck in the game has Mega Minion and Baby Dragon in there. I think instead of nerfing the Baby Dragon, instead redesign the Wizard to make it also a 4 elixir splash damage dealer. Because the problem with just nerfing a Baby Dragon is that swarm decks would destroy the meta. Right now, Baby D is kind of keeping swarm decks in check. However, if you had another reliable splash damage dealer to compete with the Baby Dragon for a 4 elixir splasher, it might make the meta a bit more diverse in terms of splash damage dealers. So that's my idea, guys, is for the Wizard, make it cost 4 elixir, lower the health, lower the damage, and just make it compete with the Baby Dragon in that spot. The other idea, like obviously if they don't want to do that, I would suggest doing the same thing to the Executioner. Right now, Executioner and Wizard overlap too much in my opinion. They're both 5 elixir splash damage dealers. There's a whole lot of overlap with those two cards. So either the Wizard or the Executioner, in my opinion, should be changed to 4 elixir and have their health and damage nerfed to compensate. So that is my idea, guys, for those two cards, Executioner and Wizard. Let me know what you think of that idea down below. Obviously, like I said before, guys, the Wizard is one of the most controversial cards in Clash Royale. So I want to make it very clear. I'm not suggesting just, you know, straight buffing the Wizard. What I'm saying is redesigning it in total. But that is the end of my kind of balanced wish list. nerfing Barbarian Barrel Snowball, Dark Prince, Royal Giant, 4 cards to be nerfed, and then buffing the Wall Breakers, the Goblin Cage, the Recruits, the Cannon card. That's my buff wish list. Once again, guys, if you kind of, I don't know why you would miss it. It was in the intro. If you missed the news on the official news, the next update will be including a whole bunch of balance changes, including a complete melee range balancing that affects a lot of cards with melee attacks. Once again, feel free to leave your guess down below. What do you think that means? Also, leave a comment down below, guys. What is your personal balance change wish list? If you had a whole bunch of balance changes, what cards would you want to see buffed, nerfed, or even redesigned? Let me know, guys, down below in those comments. But anyways, guys, that is the end of the video. Really hope you enjoyed it. If you did, make sure to leave a like, subscribe for some more Clash Royale content. Thank you so much for watching, guys. We will see you in the next one.